Okay, so I'm going to show you how this productivity system works in action. So we've gone through the setup phase, which I know was a little bit tedious, and now we're just going to kind of take a look at how this works practically. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete everything. We got kind of a taste of how this works practically, but this is going to be kind of like the deep dive portion of it. We split this up into work, personal life, and then we have a backup. So in our work one, and so ideally before you duplicate these, you would kind of erase everything first, but I didn't do that unfortunately. So I'm going to have to delete them from both places. So I'm deleting those pushes from there and this push from here, but we didn't create too many, so it's not a big deal. But I'm just cleaning this out so we have a nice clean start. And ideally you would want your backup of this to basically have no data in it. And that way when you ever need to create a new one, it's like a fresh start. But I digress. So here we are. Let's focus on work first of all. So actually, you know what? Let's focus on personal life because that one's pretty simple. I'm going to make this one really short and sweet. Basically, one of our pushes, for example, in my personal life and hopefully yours and part of the productivity system is to improve your skills. So I call this research and development. And the other thing that you can do too in your personal life, if you wanted to, maybe I'm gonna save that as a secret for the end of the video because there's actually something really powerful that you can do here, but I don't want to make it too overwhelming. So let's just focus on having one push initially for our personal life, and that is going to be research and development. And so now in our action items, what we can do is we can filter on our pushes. So again, if you come over here to this filter tab, if you've never clicked it before, it won't be showing. But when you click it, it drops down here and you can select pushes and we can filter on research and development. I always recommend that you be filtered on the one that you're going to use because then if you create something here like an item, it automatically assigns it to your push. And then you don't have to like manually come in here and change it later. And so one of our to-do items, for example, is maybe I'm just going to make some up here. I'm just going to say like learn JavaScript, or you might have like a particular JavaScript tutorial. So maybe it's like learn JavaScript and it's like, and then it's like you would maybe paste the link here to where that resource was that you wanted to learn, and then we could, as another one, we could maybe want to learn Python. So I'm going to make these kind of generic, but typically I would say like, it'd be like, oh, that Python tutorial on so-and-so's page, and then you can add like a link to it here. So that way you remember where that resource is that you wanted to learn. And then additionally, what you can do is when you're learning these, you can actually I like to add a little section down here. So I'll usually click right into here and I'll do like a shift enter and it opens up this section and I can do a continue at, and I can be like chapter 2. And that way, whenever I finish doing one of my pushes on research and development, which again, we want to try to do a minimum of 1 hour of research and development in our personal life to continue building our skills daily. And so, I might read a couple chapters and then when I finish, my hour is up of work, I'd be like, okay, I left off at chapter 4, so I just finished chapter 3, so continue at chapter 4, and this is in progress now. And then, maybe you want to learn something else like Elixir, and then, what's more important, learn an Elixir or Python. You can actually organize these by priority, which is really amazing. Or if you're just not even interested in doing something right now, you can leave it in the backlog, right? So these are the ones that you like want to do right now in your to-do. And then when you're actually doing them, they move to in progress. And then when you're done with them, obviously, when we finish this chapter of this JavaScript tutorial, we can move it to done. And there could be all sorts of things you want to learn too. Like maybe you want to learn finance. Like it's not all about programming. Your research and development is everything that's going to help you out in your personal and professional life. So you want to learn, something with like automotive, and so that could be in there. And what's more important, finance or automotive, investing? Maybe your financial career is more important, so you bump it up. And then when you have your 1 hour session, you can come in here, to-do list. This was at the top of the list. It was the most important. So I move this over to in progress. I start working on it. And you can even work on multiple things simultaneously. And then you can mark off like where you left off on each one. So then, whoops. So then you can do like continue at, and then you can put, notes here, just like I kind of showed before. And you can do that for all of them. So like, continue at. And that's really useful, and it keeps you organized, and it keeps you moving forward in your research and development. And there's a couple other pushes that we can add into our personal life, but I said I would circle back on those. Let's focus on doing an example where we have multiple pushes. Let's switch over to showing how we can demonstrate our work life. So your work life, I agree that your employer probably has something like a task management system, but it can still be really beneficial to have stuff in here, because what you can do is you can have pushes at your workplace, such as like coding. So like one of the things that you have to do daily is coding. Another might be QA, code review. And another could be like support tickets you have to check in on. And then there could be, a ton more. Or like you could even have a research and development for work, not just, not your personal life, but maybe, your personal life, you might put more research and development into, because you might be doing 1 hour daily. At work, you might only be doing 1 hour every couple weeks or so, depending on what you need to research for your company. But these could be anything that you want, really. So you'll find that they'll come naturally. Whatever you feel like you need to push at work is going to come very naturally, and it's going to fall into these categories. And then in our action items now, what we can do is, let's say we need to do something with like support tickets. So if I come over to action items, I will go to our filter, and I'll filter on no longer push to. I was just stuck there from being previously filtered. So we'll do support tickets. So here we could have like a, support ticket 40 or 23. I'm just making up random numbers. And then support ticket 17. So this could help you prioritize things at work, because maybe you have a support ticket system, but maybe it's not prioritized in the way you want it to. And so, I'm just going to do like S now as shorthand for support. But to give you an idea, you could have a backlog of support tickets that you need to help with, or maybe your work doesn't track like phone calls, so you have to call company XYZ. Right? That wouldn't be always in a system. So this can help you track things that your work misses. So I've worked for companies and like there's always something that's missing that like isn't tracked like in your work queue, or like you want to make your own personal notes about, right? So when it comes to support tickets, maybe you want to have a note about client 1. So you can come into this notes section and you can put notes like talked to them on XYZ, on whenever, and they like the color blue theme, so you can put notes here, and you can organize your life with like client 1, client 2 for support tickets, and then you can move out the ones that you are to do, and then you can move the ones that are in progress but aren't complete here, and then you can come in here and you can say like, okay, these are notes about the ticket, personal notes, because you don't want to like share like your thought process necessarily with your with the client, like, so you're like, oh, I think it's completely broken, we can't help them. You wouldn't want to write that in the support ticket to them. So it might be personal notes, or like debugging notes, like, oh, I think if I try scenario 1 or scenario 2, that might help. So you can see how like this system comes in really beneficial for a company, for you inside of your company. And then, so let's say we just spent an hour doing support tickets. So we can come back to our pushes. We can punch in that we did 1 weekly point towards that. And I pasted these notes here. So let's say we're doing 3 hours of deep work per day. Then we're trying to get 15 points per week. So we can basically add these up throughout the week. So we did 1 point there. So let's say like, tomorrow we do another point, we'll add a point to there, and this will build up throughout the week. And then when the end of the week comes, let's just add a few here. I just want to just show you that if you have a bunch in here, you can either go through and delete them all, or if that's tedious because you might have a lot of other pushes here, then what you can do is you can actually just click this column and delete the property, and then just recreate the number and the weekly points. So at the beginning of each week, you can just reset your weekly points by just deleting the column and recreating it, and it won't affect anything. All of your action items are still there. You're good to go. The other thing that I highly recommend actually for one of your pushes is weekly organization. So what I recommend is that at the start of every week, you basically, so if it's like Monday, like first thing you do, you get in the office, you don't feel like necessarily working, you're not really sure what's going on. I always put a point into, first thing I do like Monday morning is put a point into weekly organization. I'll spend an hour and I can just come in here now and I can filter by my weekly organization. So the weekly organization may mean that I'm jumping around to like support tickets and I'm like moving things around, or I'm deciding that I'm not going to call the company. I'm going to move this one up. This could be part of your weekly organization, but you can also come in here and you could take like notes about the week, like week 13 notes, or just, this week's notes. And then, you could like date it. So that way you could be like, it's 1/1/22 or 23. And then here we could be like this week's notes, and it could be like 1, 2, or 7 days from now, 23. And then you could, bump that up to the top. So now you have like last week's notes, you have this week's notes, and then you can look back and you can say like, okay, what was written here last week that I organized. And this is like super helpful, obviously. Like there's so much you can get out of this. Like and like weekly organization, you can also be like to do, like I want to clean the office today. Like this week I want to clean the office. It's a to-do thing. So like I'm going to put that in a to-do, and I'm just going to like go start cleaning my office right now as part of my 1 hour towards my weekly organization. And then like also like like clean up notes, and I can move it into the in progress. And then at the end of this 1 hour weekly organization, what I could do is, this is up. Well, I know that next week I'm going to want to clean my office, so I can move this back in a to-do for next week. And then clean notes is going to be a to-do for next week, like clean up all my notes around this Notion. So, these can be repeating, where you can move them over to in progress, you can move them over to done, then you can move them back over into to-do or into progress. You can really do anything you want here. This is just some of the things that I've done. This is some of the ways that I've used it, and it's been really helpful for me. It's really flexible, and I think that you will naturally find, if you think about it, if you try to focus on the system as being like, what are you trying to push and get done for your company or for yourself? You set those up as your pushes. And then you just focus on like, okay, well, what tasks are necessary to be a driver for that push? And then you build them into action items that you need to take action on to drive those pushes. And that's really it. So I could give you a couple more examples just to build on things. But with coding, you could also just, so for me, what's typically happened honestly with coding is it's like, okay, we're going to put an hour into coding, but my action items in my coding, I can go filter on coding, but mine would pretty much mostly be empty. And there's only been a few exceptions, but if you have a separate part of your company that is just like, you have like a Jira or you have a task management system, then that might be already being managed for you. You might not need this little setup here. That might be managed somewhere else, but you can still come in here and track it as a push so that you can keep yourself accountable to, okay, I pushed coding, and then all that stuff was tracked in our Jira or our task management system. So honestly, That's another benefit here, is that you don't, if something else in your life is already managing that part, you can just use this to keep yourself accountable in doing the deep work for it, but it's already organized somewhere else. So that's okay. But you will find that things like weekly organization aren't taken care of for you, and like little notes about clients and other various things, they'll all fall into these categories. Or even one of the big ones is like side project to help the company, right? Like maybe you have an idea for your company that you want to help, that you think is going to be really beneficial and probably get you a bonus or something like that. So you want to put in like an hour or so or two per week. So like every other day or something, you're doing like an hour to put a point into it. So if you have a side project for your company that is not tracked in your company, you could track it this way. And then you can set up one of your pushes to be like side project. And additionally, just like I said, side project, additionally, that could be like research and development. So like you're like, you know what? Like I'm going to set up a research, I'm just going to call it R&D for shorthand, but research and development for my company. And I'm going to start putting an hour a week into the R&D of like how we can do certain things. And so some of those things that you might want to R&D for your company is like integration with external system. You know what I mean? You want to get educated and be able to be knowledgeable of something to help your company. Or you're like, how, will Elasticsearch be good for our solution? And you don't know Elasticsearch, so you decide to put some time into like learning Elasticsearch and how it will apply to your company's web application or so forth. And so you could like be doing some R&D for your company, and then you could also be doing R&D for your own personal life. And you can break these up. So these are just a lot of different ideas. At the very least, though, you can always rely on having this pushes board to keep yourself accountable. And you should be basically putting in 2 to 4 of these ideally every single day, and you can add these up. And then the other thing you can do too, which I almost forgot to mention, is you can prioritize your initiatives. So you can prioritize like coding at the top, QA here. So you can kind of like prioritize them. And then what can happen throughout the week is if this is in the correct priority, so I should be doing mostly coding, mostly QA and code review, and then support tickets should be important. And then like the side project on the company is probably less important. And then weekly organization only happens once a week, right? So here, check this out. Let's just say that I did like support tickets. I did an hour today, and then I had to do 2 hours tomorrow. So now it's up to 3 total for the week. And then after that, I did like 2 more hours the next day because our client's been needing a lot of support. Well, I said that our initiative was coding is the most important thing. So I'm behind. Like this is disproportional. It should be like the top number should be the most, and then QA and code review should be the second highest, and then support tickets should be the third highest. So, have you gotten misaligned? So now you can take a moment. This can help you realize like, okay, I'm going to put a couple more hours into QA, and I'm going to allocate some more of my push back into coding because I've been doing too much support. I've been too reactionary. I need to get back to doing some productive work that's going to actually be like, that's going to be not reactory towards the elements that are happening, but something that's going to be beneficial and proactive for the company. So this is some ideas of how this can be used in an actionable setting. I hope that was helpful. You can always reach out at info@productiveprogrammer.com if you have questions or you want some help. And I'm always happy to set up a one-on-one call if you wanted to do a support session. I'd be more than happy to help anybody with helping organize things if something was not making 100% sense. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next videos.